Hello everyone, and welcome to another Warcry battle report. Today the Kharadron Overlords are facing off against the Untamed beasts. As such, this will be the first battle report on this channel where a standard Warcry warband will be facing off against an Age of Sigmar warband. In any case, let's introduce the warbands, draw some cards, and get straight into the rest of this battle report. Starting with the Kharadron Overlords Hammer Squad, it will contain an engine rigger with grapnel launcher, an Arcanaut company privateer with skypike, a privateer with an aethermatic volley gun, and a privateer with a pistol and Arcanaut cutter. Their dagger squad will then contain an engine rigger with rapid fire rivet gun and aethermatic saw, who will be accompanied by 2 more privateers. And lastly, for their shield squad, it will contain the warband's leader, an engine master with engine harness, together with 2 more privateers, one of which being armed with a light skyhook. Now onto the Untamed beasts. In their hammer squad they will have a First Fang, a Plains Runner, and a Prey Taker with Sawtooth Blade. Their dagger squad will contain the Prey Taker with Fang the Axe, the Beast Speaker, and his fluffy friend the Rock Tusk Prowler. And lastly, in their shield squad, it will contain the warband's leader, the Heart Eater, together with 2 Plains Runners. Now that the warbands are introduced, let's draw some cards to see what the battle has in store for us. Starting with the terrain card, I pull this pretty dense setup with quite a lot of high ground. As for the victory condition, I pull Take and Hold. This means that after 4 battle rounds, the victor is decided purely based on whether one player has their warband's leader within 5 inches horizontally of the center of the battlefield, while their opponent does not. However, if at the end of battle round 4 neither warband has their leader within 5 inches of the center, it'll be a contest of who has the most fighters within that range. As for the deployment card, I pull Bloodbath. A fairly balanced deployment card with both hammer squads only coming in at turn 2. Now rolling to see who gets to deploy where, the brown dice being the Untamed beasts and the green representing the Kharadron. The Untamed beasts win the roll off and they choose to be the blue deployment zone. Now as for the twist, I pull Azurite Lightning Storm, which gives every fighter in the game a special quad called Lightning Strike. Although this ability is not particularly powerful in terms of its damage output, it does have a unique advantage in that it lets you target any fighter on the battlefield. As such, I expect it may not get much use, but it may come in clutch in some specific situations. So, with the cards pulled and the warbands introduced, let's roll some dice and get straight into turn 1 initiative. Starting with the Kharadron Overlords, they will roll 5 5s. As for the Untamed beasts, they will roll a triple and a double. For wild dice, both warbands will hold off for using them, at least for now. This makes it so that both warbands have the same number of singles, and so for the initiative, a roll-off ensues. With the Untamed beasts taking the win, let's get right into the first activation. The Untamed beasts will immediately start off strong with a very aggressive move. They will make their Rock Tusk Prowler move into melee range and use the Pounce ability to immediately deal some damage as well. After this, they will use their remaining action to attack. Hitting on 3s, he will deal a total of 4 more damage. Not liking the position they are in with the Beast Speaker so close by, the privateer with Skyhook is immediately going to disengage and return fire to the Rock Tusk Prowler. Hitting on 4s, he sadly scores no hits though, so that will end his turn. The Untamed beasts then continue their very aggressive approach by making the Prey Taker with Fanged Axe double move using the rush ability to close the gap. An engine rigger then flies up onto a platform and uses their rivet gun to deal some chip damage against the enemy warband's leader. So rolling 2 dice hitting on 4s, he manages to get 2 crits dealing a total of 8 damage. A Plains Runner will then double move to get into the fray as soon as possible. The privateer that has the high ground then repositions himself and goes for a pistol shot on said Plains Runner. Hitting on 4s, he unfortunately does no damage. The other planes runner then simply double moves to join his buddy. A privateer then repositions and tries to take a shot at the prey taker with fanged axe. Hitting on 5s, he also does no damage. Definitely not the greatest turn in terms of pistol shots so far. The Heart Eater will then also double move to advance into the middle of the board. The last privateer is then going to double move to get onto the high ground as well. This leads to the final Untamed Beast activation, where they will move their Beast Speaker into the fray. The Kharadron Overlords then use the quad ability Rampage on the Endrin Master. He will close the gap and immediately begin his onslaught on the Prey Taker with Fanged Axe. Hitting on 3s, his first attack will deal a total of 9 damage, which is 1 damage short of finishing him. As such, he will use his second attack on him as well, and this one does the job. His final attack is then reserved for the Beast Speaker. Still hitting on 3s, he does not score any hits though, ending his turn and battle round 1. For this first turn of the game, I think that the Untamed Beasts definitely took quite some heavy blows. Even having lost a fighter, they paid quite a heavy price for their advance. However, they're now right up in the face of the mostly ranged Kharadron Overlords. Not to mention, their warband's leader, which is crucial for the victory condition, is also surrounded. At the same time, seeing the amount of damage that has been done already though, the Kharadron Overlords might be able to pick off individual fighters from a distance with the help of their hammer squad. After all, there's still quite some turns to go as well. So, without further ado, let's see what turn 2 has in store for us. Starting with the Kharadron Overlords, they will roll a triple and a double. As for the Untamed Beasts, they will roll a double and 4 singles. The Kharadron Overlords will then use their wild dice to turn their triple into a quad, whereas the Untamed Beasts will use one of their wild dice to turn their double into a triple and use another to get another double. This means that once again the first activation will go to the Untamed Beasts. They will use it to activate their Rock Tusk Prowler and, using the double onslaught ability, attack the Endrin Master. So, hitting on 5s, the first attack scores 4 hits, dealing a total of 8 damage. The second attack then scores a crit and 2 more hits, dealing a total of 9 damage, leaving the Endrin Master with just 5 wounds remaining. Seeing as his time is running out, the Endrin Master then activates and uses the Rampage ability, truly making the most out of those last few hit points he has remaining. He will first turn to the Beast Speaker, and hitting on 3s, he manages to do 6 damage in his first attack. He will then strike again, and with his second attack he will deal 11 damage, which is more than enough to take him out. With 1 attack action remaining, he then turns his gaze towards the Rock Tusk Prowler, and once again hitting on 3s, he will deal 6 damage to the Prowler, ending his turn. One of the planes runners then runs over to the already wounded privateer with Skyhook and tries to take him out in 1 attack. He will only need to do 3 damage, as this privateer has already taken 9 damage from the Prowler previously. So, hitting on 4s, he manages to do just that. With a crit and a hit, he deals a total of 4 damage, taking out the fighter and ending his turn. One of the privateers nearby, enraged at seeing his comrade die, then immediately turns around and tries to shoot the planes runner in the face. He'll use 2 of his attack actions on this, and hitting on 4s, he manages a crit and a hit, dealing a total of 4 damage. Another planes runner then runs up and tries to finish off the Endrin Master. He will be hitting on 5s, and unfortunately he scores no hit, ending his turn. One of the privateers on the high ground is then going to try to shoot the Heart Eater. Now, because the Heart Eater doesn't really want to move out to engage, he is going to take the take cover reaction. So, hitting on 5s. Due to the take cover reaction, on a 4-up this crit becomes a hit instead. But unfortunately it remains a crit, and thus the Heart Eater will take 3 damage. The Prey Taker with Sawtooth Blade then double moves up behind one of the privateers. The privateer will then immediately turn around to try and retaliate. Now, hitting on 5s, he manages 2 hits, dealing 2 damage. The Untamed Beast's first fang is then going to move up and use the triple ability Harpoon Snag. This will let them make a bonus ranged attack action, and they will use it against the privateer up ahead. Hitting on 3s, this ranged attack action will deal a total of 4 damage. Afterwards, per the rules of the harpoon snag ability, the privateer will move up to 5 inches towards the first fang. This brings him into melee range of the first fang, and as such, he will try to finish him off with a melee attack action. So, hitting on 3s, he scores a crit and 2 hits, dealing a total of 9 damage, which combined with the previous ranged attack is actually enough to kill the privateer. After this, the engine rigger with grapnel launcher is going to fly up and take a shot at the heart eater. So hitting on 5s, he manages 1 hit, dealing 1 damage. After this, the last plains runner is going to double move to stand shoulder to shoulder with the prey taker with sawtooth blade. The engine rigger with rivet gun and aethermatic saw is then going to make it down to the heart eater to attempt to finish him off. So hitting on 3s, he actually manages a crit and a hit, dealing a total of 7 damage, just nearly not killing the heart eater. Afterwards, the remaining Kharadron fighters will simply double move their way into the battlefield. And with that comes an end to turn 2. By the looks of things, it seems that the victory won't be had by having a leader in the center of the board, as both warband leaders are about to go down. As such, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few turns, as the Untamed beasts are in quite a good position to do some killing right now, but are at the same time outnumbered 6 to 8, with some fighters going down any second. So with that said, let's get straight into turn 3 initiative. So, starting with the Kharadron Overlords, they will roll 2 doubles and 2 singles. Then onto the Untamed Beasts, they will roll a triple and 3 singles. In the end, both parties decide to then hold off onto their wild dice, meaning the first activation will go to the Untamed Beast's Heart Eater. He will attempt a quick takedown of the engine rigger in front of him to hopefully save his skin for just a turn longer. So, hitting on 3s, his first attack action will yield him 2 hits and a crit, dealing a total of 9 damage. To finish off the engine rigger, he will need 7 more damage, and so with his second attack action, he only scores 2 hits, dealing 4 more damage. After this, he will still use the Inspiring Presence triple ability and give the turn over to another planesrunner. This planesrunner will attempt to take out the already heavily wounded engine master, and so hitting on 5s, he scores 2 hits on his first attack action, which is enough to seal the deal. After that, he will use his remaining move action to walk towards the center. The engine rigger then decides it is time to finish off the heart eater. He will only need a single hit to finish off the heavily wounded warband's leader, and hitting on 3s, he will manage just that on his first attack action, leaving both warbands without their leader. They will then use their remaining action to escape back onto the high ground. The prey taker with sawtooth blade then starts swinging at the privateer. Hitting on 3s, the first attack action scores 3 hits, dealing 6 damage. He then swings again, and this time he deals 6 damage as well with a crit and a hit, finishing off the privateer. The last privateer on the high ground then uses an action to shoot back at the prey taker. Hitting on 5s though, he scores no hits, after which he will use his remaining action to retreat. The first fang will then double move to get closer to the middle of the board. The privateer with the aethermatic volley gun is then going to utilize the absolute maximum of his range by shooting at the prey taker with sawtooth blade. Hitting on 5s though, he scores only 2 crits, dealing a total of 6 damage, which will leave this prey taker with only 2 wounds remaining. One of the planesrunners then leaves the high ground and joins his allies on the ground floor. The engine rigger with the grapnel launcher then tries to finish off the prey taker with sawtooth blade. Now hitting on 5s, he misses the first shot, but on the second manages to catch 2 hits, dealing enough damage to finish him off. The Rocktusk Prowler then moves in to intercept the privateer with Skypike, and with his remaining action tries to deal as much damage as possible. So hitting on 3s, he manages to get 4 hits, dealing a total of 8 damage to the privateer. However, this privateer will then immediately retaliate using the onslaught ability. While this privateer is just as squishy as all the others, the skypike is a powerful weapon. And so hitting on 4s on his first attack, he manages a crit and 2 hits, already dealing 9 damage, leaving the prowler with just 5 runes remaining for the second attack. This time, however, the privateer is a lot less lucky and scores no hits whatsoever for a second attack. And so for the final activation of this turn, the last privateer is going to move into melee range with the Rocktusk Prowler to assist his friend. And so the turn ends in a pretty chaotic position. At this very moment, the Kharadron Overlords do still have the number advantage with 6 fighters on the board against 5, but their units are quite heavily damaged and generally quite squishy as well. If the First Fang and the Rocktusk Prowler manage to do some work next turn, they could easily steal the win, but of course that will remain to be seen. So let's get straight into the final turn of this battle. So starting with the Kharadron Overlords, they will once again roll 2 doubles and 2 singles. As for the Untamed Beasts, they will roll a triple and 3 singles. Both of the warbands really want initiative right now, and so they will put all of their wild dice to achieving that goal. This will lead to a roll-off, and the win in this case will go to the Untamed Beasts. And it is then that the Untamed Beasts decide to make a pretty greedy choice. They will activate their Rocktusk Prowler first, hoping to take out both of the privateers in front of them. So starting with the privateer with the skypike, hitting on 3s, he will score 2 crits, which is more than enough to take him out. The real challenge will be taking out the second privateer, which will require 2 crits and a hit. And so once again hitting on 3s. This time he gets a crit and a hit, which is not enough. This gives the Kharadron Overlords the chance to retreat with their heavily wounded engine rigger. The Untamed Beasts have accounted for this, however, and they will now proceed with the second part of their very greedy strategy. The plan being having the First Fang one-shot the other engine rigger. For this he will use the triple ability Harpoon Snag, and then follow it up with 2 more ranged attacks. Seeing as a hit is 2 damage and a crit 5, First Fang is really looking for at least 2 crits here, and so hitting on 3s, his first attack will yield him 2 hits, dealing 4 damage. After the engine rigger gets pulled over, the second and third attack will then be rolled together. And unfortunately for the Untamed Beasts, there's only 1 crit in there, and so the engine rigger lives. Now, this action here effectively ends the game. The Kharadron already have their heavily wounded engine rigger and the privateer with a thermatic volley gun within 5 inches of the center, and the privateer engaged with the Rocktusk Prowler can freely disengage to do so as well. However, of course, in their immediate next turn, they would immediately bring their other engine rigger, now also quite wounded, to safety as well. Lastly, they would still have 1 privateer on the high ground, and that one would also easily be able to get within 5 inches of the center, bringing the Kharadron's total fighters to 5. As for the Untamed Beasts, they only have planes runners that can still activate, and none of them could take an action that could prevent any of the things I just mentioned. The Rocktusk Prowler has already activated and is outside of 5 inches of the center, meaning that with 3 planes runners and a First Fang, the Untamed Beasts only have 4 fighters near the center, and so at the end of the turn, victory would go to the Kharadron Overlords. So, with the battle report over with, let's get into some post-game discussion. So, I think in this last turn, the Untamed Beasts could have also used a different strategy, which probably would have more likely gotten them a tie than what they did now. If they had first activated their First Fang rather than the Rocktusk Prowler, they very likely would have been able to take out the heavily wounded engine rigger. After this, to still get the win, the Kharadron Overlords would need to activate their privateer with skypike and then manage to take down the Rocktusk Prowler within 1 attack action to still have an action left to move him towards the center. Now, even if the Rocktusk Prowler would survive this, the other privateer could still keep him locked until the last minute, which could basically undo the whole benefit that the Untamed Beasts would have gained from quickly killing that engine rigger. And so I decided it would probably be more fun to go for a bit more of a risky strategy that would heavily rely on heavy damage output from the Untamed Beasts, and so that's the outcome that you got. Also, as a general heads up, I might be uploading a bit less in the coming time. Not to say that this video was uploaded on time, but the reason for that is I want to see if I can maybe try out some other forms of content. And I'm looking into how I could maybe run a narrative campaign on YouTube. So in that regard, if there's like another game system you would like to see, like preferably in the fantasy wargame / skirmish genre, because that's what I own the most stuff of. For instance, I'm thinking right now of making a battle report for one of the one-page rule sets, specifically regiments. And I've thought of doing some other classics as well, like Mordheim or Frostgrave, but I don't have a lot of experience in those game systems, so that would probably take a while still. Or if you have any specific recommendations in regards for a Warcry narrative campaign, yeah, feel free to let me know in the comments as always. So with that said, I hope you all enjoyed the battle report of today. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to do the standard stuff, subscribing, sharing the video, all that stuff really helps out. Or if instead you would want to buy me a coffee, feel free to do that as well with my Ko-fi link in the description. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next Warcry battle report.